everyone. Welcome to this reaction video. A couple people have sent me this interview with the director and writer for Shadow Hearts. Rick Hill sent it to me on Twitter, and Carl, who is also the same person who sent me the director's cut of Shadow Hearts 2, also sent it to me as well, and they were both really excited. And I was like, have you seen this? Like, no. And then I watched like a tiny bit of it, and I got really excited about something I heard, and I just hadn't gotten around to watching the whole thing. When Carl finally messaged me, I'm like, okay, I should probably watch it. So what this is going to be is kind of me reacting and talking about things that it's mostly the director. They also have the art designer on there as well, but he doesn't really say as much. It was an interview done, I believe, through an Italian gaming website, and they translated it into English so that we could have the full interview, and it's pretty amazing. I wrote down some notes as I was listening to it, so I'm just going to kind of read through the notes and go from there. This is totally going to be spoilers for all Shadow Hearts games: Koudelka, Shadow Hearts, Shadow Hearts 2, Shadow Hearts from the New World. Yeah, so we're gonna start with what I think is probably one of the biggest revelations, and it's the fact of the ending for Shadow Hearts Covenant, Shadow Hearts 2. And this is something that I have been fighting for desperately for years, trying to convince people of. And everyone's like, oh no, it always follows the bad ending. And then From the New World, the Ring of Souls makes a comment about how the other person, something bad happened to them. I can't remember exactly. So it was like, that's the only indication you have of what happened to Yuri after Shadow Hearts 2, Shadow Hearts Covenant. But then it's like, but if that's the case, and Yuri lost his memory, and Roger's supposed to be taking care of him, why would Roger just leave him and go with Hilda to New Mexico? It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, so the director said that Shadow Hearts 3, which technically From the New World is not Shadow Hearts 3, which I never even thought about. It's From the New World. So again, it's kind of like it's its own game. The next game following Yuri's story doesn't exist yet. He said that he also believes that since the player, or Yuri, sees the outcome of Shadow Hearts 2, that they would lead to the good ending for Shadow Hearts. This pretty much confirms to me that Yuri does indeed go to the past at the end of Shadow Hearts 2 in the good ending. And this is what I've been trying to like, I've been fighting with people about this for so long, and there are a lot of people that agree with me, and there are a lot of people that don't. But this is it. This is straight from the director and writer of the series. So there you go. And it totally makes sense, because when you look at the bad ending for Koudelka, by the way, the question was, are we to believe that the bad ending for Shadow Hearts 2 is canon, since the bad ending for Koudelka and the bad ending for Shadow Hearts are canon? And he said, I don't believe so. But when you look at the endings, the bad ending for Koudelka has much more to it. It's way longer. It explains more of the story. Where the good ending, it just kind of ends. Like, when I played Koudelka and I got the bad ending, like the official bad ending, not the one where you can't even get to the ending because the thing kills you, which I also got. But when you get the bad ending, there was so much to it, and I was like, oh, well, what's the good ending? And I looked up the good ending, and there's like hardly anything to it, and I was like, this is the good ending? This ending is worse than the bad ending. In Shadow Hearts, it's similar. The actual endings themselves are very much about the same length, but in Shadow Hearts, there's a lot of dialogue that leads up to the bad ending, and in the good ending, there's none of that. Like, you get an extra scene where Alice confesses how she feels for Yuri in the good ending, and then they just kind of move on. It's not even mentioned again. So I think that kind of supports the same thing, and then that leads to Shadow Hearts 2, where throughout all of Shadow Hearts 2, Yuri is trying to discover himself. Jean keeps asking him, like, what do you want? And that's the ending. It's simply based on a choice. There's nothing like in Koudelka, you have to beat that freaking hard ass final boss. Shadow Hearts, you got to do all these extra steps to save Alice. And in Shadow Hearts 2, it's just a choice. And I think that is really important because you know Yuri. You know there's no way. He's given the option of, I can't remember what the good ending option is, but the other one is like live peacefully. And it's like, that's not Yuri. Yuri's not one that's just going to lay down and be like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to live a peaceful life. Blah, blah, blah. So, whatever. and there's also more to the good ending. It's longer. We see the whole scene with the tree and Allison getting him out of the tree. And then we get that awesome train scene at the end. So yeah, so when I saw this is like the first part of the interview I saw. I just like skipped ahead to it and I saw this answer and I was like, oh my god, yes, thank you. It's just made my day. Another thing he said was he was asked about the humor change or the dark tone changing between Shadow Hearts and Shadow Hearts Covenant, Shadow Hearts 2. And the director said that a lot of people gave him feedback and said the monsters were too scary and they didn't like it. And he liked that response because he wanted to do something different. He didn't want to do a typical RPG style. He wanted to do it with, again, historical tones and something that was darker. Which is something he explains also. I didn't really touch on that because I only wrote about the things that really jumped out to me. But he said that it really came down to a political decision, and that sucks. And by a political decision, he means that the higher-ups pretty much came to him and said, no, this is too different from what we're used to, and people aren't going to like it, so you have to do something that fits the norms. So he changed Shadow Hearts Covenant, and apparently they still didn't like it, so then we get From the New World. Yay. So, yeah. And even the interview is like, and you know the series kind of ended with From the New World, so yeah. And the humor and darkness change, like, it kind of bothers me between Shadow Hearts and Shadow Hearts Covenant, but I just kind of look at them as different games. And I do really enjoy the humor in Shadow Hearts Covenant, and I love the humor in Shadow Hearts. Like, it's just so dark, and Shadow Hearts is like one of the perfect games for me. So, no, I love Shadow Hearts. I like Shadow Hearts Covenant, just not quite as much. Yeah, what was I saying? Oh, it was just the changes didn't bother me too much, but the huge change from Covenant to From the New World, like, there's hardly anything gritty left. It's really annoying. The director talked a little bit about Yuri's character, and I feel like at this point I've looked way too much into Yuri's character because he pretty much described him as a child who's dumb and pure. And I never saw him that way. I always saw Yuri as using his humor to hide his pain of either losing his mother or losing Alice in the second game. So I was a little surprised to hear him say that. Like I said, maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but I still think Yuri is one of the better protagonists out there, and I'm just gonna leave my impression of him ahead. But he did say that he wanted to make Yuri different from typical JRPG heroes who are very, like, androgynous and, like, kind of naive at times, and so pretty much, like, he didn't want a Final Fantasy hero, and that's not Yuri. But he definitely didn't want to make him too muscular either, because that's not Japanese style, and he didn't want to turn anyone off. Another thing, this is where the art director came in, and he said that when it came to designing Yuri, that the story came first and the character design came later. And I really liked that idea because I look at something like Final Fantasy 15 where we've had these character designs for almost 10 years now when they first revealed the trailer, and you can just tell from the different trailers over the years that the story has changed dramatically. the idea that the story came first and the characters came second, I just love that idea, and especially being a writer, I really like that as well. They talk a bit about the music in Shadow Hearts, and the director just says that he really enjoyed the music and that he didn't really have any direction for it because he doesn't know music, so they would just give him a song to be like, that's great. He did give a shout out to Getsurenka, and I really enjoyed that. He said that it fits Karen very well, and it does. So he suggests you should read the translation. And I love that song. It's so, I just love it. There's so much emotion in the song and the way that the singer sings it. And it's still, to this day, it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, video game songs of all time. So check out Getsurenka again. So even though it's about Karen, I still love it. So the next was a little bit controversial. They asked the director why he chose not to have Yuri fall in love with Karen, but to have her as his mother in the end, which also confirms this, because for some reason people try to fight this as well, that Karen is actually Yuri's mother, and why he chose to have Alice still Yuri's main focus at the end of Shadow Hearts 2. And he said, pretty basically, that if he had fallen in love with Karen, that he wouldn't have had the motivation to go in the past and change it. He also mentioned that he didn't decide until the end that Karen would be his mother as he was writing the story. So that might explain why it's a bit strange watching it again when you know the outcome. He mentions the idea that he wanted pure love, and that was the reason that Yuri still loves Alice. And not some new hot females introduced. He mentioned Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior, whatever it's called in Japan, 5 being a big inspiration for this. And unfortunately, I haven't played that game, so I don't know what kind of influence that has on it. But he said if you hadn't played that game, Shadow Hearts 2 might have ended differently. But that, of course, anything has to do about Yuri ending up with Karen makes me happy. Or not ending up with Karen. No. Yuri not ending up with Karen. Yuri ending up with Alice makes me happy. Oh god, I'm never gonna live this down. Another thing they asked was about Albert and his design, and they said that Albert is actually based on Hannibal Lecter. That they watched Silence of the Lambs, and they got the idea of a suave murderer. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never noticed that. And wow, like now hearing it, it makes a lot of sense. Like you have this guy that's really creepy and evil, but he can just come across as really suave and debonair. And he's English too. I also liked what he had to say about Albert going from being the bad guy in Shadow Hearts 1 to someone with just a different idea of justice in Shadow Hearts 2. This is kind of my justification for Albert's shift between the two games and how we can kind of sit down and talk to him. There's been a few years in between, and we learn his motives and whatnot. And that Albert just believed that he was doing the right thing and kind of believed that we were the bad guys. So, I mean, it's a crazy idea to think about, but it's real. A lot of people doing things don't, even though from one perspective it might be seen as evil, from their perspective they feel like they're doing the right thing. There's very few, there are situations where people are just evil to be evil, unfortunately, but there are a lot of situations where people come across as evil to another group or society or whatever is being bad when they're just trying to do what they think is right. And I think it's very realistic and very touching and unique, very unique. Also, this is the first mention of this, is that for the director, he wanted to actually have the third game. So I don't know if they meant from the New World or if they just meant the third game in Yuri's series. They wanted it to follow his father. I can't remember his name. I can't remember Shabney's name. And that sounds really interesting. We're going to get to this again later. I totally would have rather seen that than From the New World. I've always thought that his backstory is really neat, and I wanted to know more about him. So I think a prequel would have been great. They also talk about a game that he and the art designer worked on called Arms Heart. I've never heard of it, but I really like the art style because it's similar to Shadow Hearts. And the main character his character's model kind of looks like Yuri with blonde hair that's really long. And yeah, I thought about it. I was like, oh, I really want this game. And the director's like, it's not that good. So I was like, okay, maybe not. Asked him about crowdfunding and if he ever thought about doing that for a sequel. And he says, yeah, if I ever had the right idea for a sequel, I would. But he just doesn't think that the Shadow Hearts community is really large enough to fund the crowdfund a game. But he does really appreciate us being here and loving the game, and I completely agree. I mean, I love Shadow Hearts, and I would donate it to it, but I couldn't really donate too much money, and I don't think we could come up with the hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars that are needed to start a crowdfunding for a game these days. So unless we were gonna do like a Steam version, I would love to see it happen, but I just don't think it will happen. But we saw the original games. He also mentioned that the Judgment Ring, that the idea actually came from like beat 'em up games, but that they couldn't actually. They wanted to make it more. They wanted to make it simpler, so they came up with the ring, just so you would hit X as it went around the ring. So they wanted it similar to that, but easier, and I just thought that was really funny because I still died the first battle I was ever in when Shadow Hearts came out. So yeah. They talk about an HD. A fan asked about an HD remake or remaster, and he said that it is a possibility, but it's not in the works at all. But he's gonna talk to the team about it. So could happen, could not happen. Be really, really neat if it did. Obviously, I would buy it. The best part about this was the end. They actually have character design for what would have been Shadow Hearts 3, which again would have been a prequel about Yanjipiro, Hyuga, I believe is his name, Ben, Yuri's father, and then an art design for Karando's father, which was going to be the second main character. And the story would have revolved around them, and how cool would that have been? Oh my gosh, I saw this and it's like, the video's like, and wait, there's more. And I'm like, what more could there be? And then they showed up these two character pictures, and I was like, oh, they did character designs for the guys that interviewed them, and then it popped up on the screen, and it's like, this is what the characters from Shadow Hearts 3 would have looked like, which would have been Yuri's father and Karando's father. And I'm like, what? So, yes, definitely go watch this video to see that. Let me know what you guys thought about the video if you watched it, what you have to say in response to what I have to say. Like I said, these are just my thoughts after watching the video. I thought it was really interesting. I'm so glad to see it. They're still interacting with fans and answering questions about it, even though they've moved on to other things. You can just tell the director and even the art designer really liked working on Shadow Hearts, and just what the director had to say about his youth and how he came up with the story, and you can tell that it was a passion project for him, and I really like that. And to me, I just love that, like, Shadow Hearts is like his baby. That was what he wanted to do, and he wanted to have mystical and humor, and but with like a Japanese style to it, and but kind of Western too, just mix it all together, and I thought it was really cool. So go watch the interview, check it out. And leave your comments about what you thought was great from the interview below. Anything you have to say about me and my reactions as well. So, yeah, I should hopefully start having some more videos up soon. Sorry for the long delay, but I'm going to get back to recording soon, so sorry. Shit happens. Okay, bye.